Go. I am Reverend Montclair, and this is Monday Church with Reverend Montclair. Today, the subject is grief by request from a friend who recently lost her mother. And grief, as some have said, is as deep as one's love. So we don't all grieve the same types of relationships in the same way because we don't all have deep feelings for those in our lives. Not all of us have great relationships with our mothers, but still we may grieve their loss when they pass because we're not only grieving the loss of a parent, we may also be grieving the impossibility of a better relationship forming because they're now gone. So there's no more chances to recreate that bond, to deepen the bond, to heal the bond. However, luckily, there are ways that we can make peace with relationships, even without still being in the presence of a person that we've loved, a person that we wanted love from, a person that we've given love to. Sometimes that love is not reciprocated, and sometimes it is, but perhaps not in the way we wanted it to be. So, back to just general grief. There are so many things to be said about when we lose someone that we love, because we are also losing perhaps a sense of security of when we had them in our lives. We might be losing a sense of having a continuous relationship throughout our lives. And now that has changed. One thing that we mistake a loss for is an ending. And it's not an ending. It's not an ending of a relationship because we still have a relationship to a person, even if they've passed away. The relationship continues, the love continues. We just don't perceive it as a give and receive situation. Because in our daily lives, when someone is removed from our presence, we generally do not perceive that relationship on a more spiritual level where love lives on, where relationships live on. If we allow ourselves to broaden our perceptions to include a, let's say, more galactic version of love, a more universal version of our experience, we can step out of our individual losses and we can embrace the community of which we now belong to, of knowing on a deep level others and their losses as well. I mentioned to my friend in a email that when you lose a parent, especially a parent that you love, it's as if you have joined a club you didn't even know existed. And what I mean by that is that we all intellectually know we're going to lose our parents one day, that they will most likely pass away before us. Not always, but most likely. And intellectually, that is just a reality. But when it happens, it's a whole nother experience that we do not expect. We do not have the preparation for it. Even if the loss, even if their dying was something that came along slowly rather than quickly. Still, what happens is we have to redefine our reality. We redefine our reality without this person's presence. So it's not just that they're gone, it's that our sense of reality is gone. Because people are a placeholder for experience in our lives, and often we don't even recognize at how much inner space they take up within us, in our emotions, in our memories, in our projections for future experiences, in the touchstones that we carry that were the wisdom or the lessons that they passed on to us, or even their sense of humor, or our laugh might be like a parent, like a special someone that you spend a lot of time with. So when that person is then gone from our physical presence, then what is left? What is left are the memories. What is left are the quirks we might have adopted as our own just from that familiarity. What also is left is this opening in our heart to integrate the essence of who that person was to us within ourselves. And that is a whole remaking of your individual self. It's making space and it's making new connections and it's making a new you. So we cannot resist this process of transformation because that prolongs the pain. That may even halt your ability to heal. So, like the butterfly that enters the chrysalis, the cocoon, to completely dissolve the self it knew it was, which was the caterpillar, to create a new self that has different abilities, that may have different wisdom accessible, that has a different sense of self and therefore a different projected future and a different experience in this world. So while we thought we were one thing, what happens through the transformation of going through grief and loss, and sometimes over and over again, it remakes us. It makes us stronger, but before that, it makes us feel vulnerable. It can make us feel stressed. It can make us feel angry. It can make us feel completely unmoored from what we knew our lives to be. And that unmooring, that wandering, because we are directionless and are not able to to captain that ship, we have to allow something greater to hold us, to perhaps guide us or carry us through that experience of the unmooring. So there's a certain amount of surrender that benefits this process. So it's allowing yourself to not control because you can't control it. The only way to control in a situation like that is, unfortunately, to numb out, to deaden our feelings, to protect ourselves. But we can't protect ourselves in this life. We can not only dull the bad feelings without also dulling the good feelings. We cannot shut down one aspect of emotions without shutting down all aspects of emotions. And then are we truly living? No. So we have to allow for the inevitable pains that are in this life. We have to be brave enough to face them. And when I say face them, I mean experience them. And not to get in our heads about believing that whatever misery we may be going through is permanent. It's not permanent. Or that the emotions would be too intense that we wouldn't be able to handle. That's not true. Our resilience as a human being is astounding. It is far beyond what we often imagine for ourselves. And when we allow a torrent of tears, because our heart is so called broken, that is the cleansing of our emotions, of our experiences, of our soul, of our connections that can be so multifaceted and wonderful in some ways and awful in other ways. But still, there are aspects of these deep connections that we have with others, whether family, friends, lovers, husbands, wives. There are aspects that might have been unsatisfactory, disappointing, something that we might feel guilty about, or something that we might still be angry about. And all of those unresolved issues have to have a resolution. Because when the person is gone, they're gone. And when someone is gone from your physical presence, then it's all up to you. You can no longer blame. You can no longer deny responsibility for your experience. Everything that gets healed must be healed by you and you alone. And yes, if you're lucky in community or with those that love you, that can be helpful too. To have someone just be present, to be a support, not to give advice, not necessarily, not to um, even do anything, but just a presence in our lives. But if we don't have that, then we've got ourselves. It's best if we get out the door and be in nature, in the aliveness of the world. even as we have lost our way in it. So, back to our responsibility for healing ourselves and our relationship to whomever, we have to take actions that symbolically communicate with the other by writing a letter of unspoken words, feelings, appreciations, angers, whatever. So if we get to that point where we are willing to heal ourselves using this method of writing and expressing our emotions can be very healing. Some say they would like to burn it afterwards, to have it just become part of the ethers. Some might bury it, to let it go into the earth, much like many of our loved ones do. However, you manage to express the unexpressed, it is valuable to you for your healing. And grief is a personal thing. It's not about the other person anymore. It's about you. It's about your loss. It's about your pain. It's about your intolerance for perhaps the suffering prior to the death of a loved one. But who's suffering now? You are. So, how can you alleviate your own suffering? Well, one is by not focusing on the loss, but focusing on appreciation for who that person was and still is in your life, in your being, because that's where they live now once they're gone. They live in you. They live in your memories. They live in your shared experience, now of which you are the only one carrying those memories. So, are there stories that are precious that you can share? Are there moments of wisdom that you get to carry forward in your life and share with others? Are there certain style? Is there a certain style this person had? Is there a way you can still communicate, even if you just talk aloud to that person as if they were in the room? There are so many ways that we can acknowledge that we are still in relationship with someone, even after they've passed, or even after they've gone from our lives for whatever reasons. I believe it's important to hold space for those we love, whether they are dead in this world, passed on to the spirit world, or whether they are absent for another reason, whether temporary or permanently. How can we hold space for that love that we have in our heart without it hurting? Some families set a place at the table for their loved ones and invite them in the spirit realm to come and dine with the family. Sometimes people will make a little altar on a windowsill or on a table or in a niche in the wall with memorabilia of that person. These are all aspects of our human condition that uses symbols to allow us to externalize that which is inside of us, and often things inside of us that are disturbing or painful. It's important to use symbols. It's important to externalize the pain. That is part of healing. Some people may use movement, and movement is really important if we're feeling stuck in our emotions, whatever they may be. Moving your body, because emotions, even even experiences from childhood can be stuck in our body. Body memory is a real thing. So the more that we can shake it off or shake it up, the more we get to move that emotion, that memory, that vibration gets to change. So music is really helpful, and also it can make you cry. There are certain songs you might have association with your loved one that is no longer in your life. And sometimes those tears are good tears because they're allowing you to feel that loving connection with your family member that may not be there anymore. And for the more spiritually inclined, you may feel that your loved one from wherever they are in the spirit realm is communicating with you through your songs that you hear. So, spirit, whether we've passed away or are still in our bodies, although distant from each other, there still is spirit that can be between us and can communicate. Again, you could be through music, it could be through um, some other experience. So I think we create more pain for ourselves when we see a death as a separation. In my experience, it is anything but a separation. It is an integration. It is an opportunity to become so much more than we were by integrating the essence of our loved one with ourselves. Now, I also believe it's very important to choose what aspects of someone that we love we would like to integrate into ourselves. Because sometimes the predominant characteristic of someone we may love, because they are family, may not be a very desirable trait. And if we're not paying attention, it may be the most predominant characteristic that we tend to take on as our own. So it is valuable to still stay true to um, our essence, our values, our integrity, and to choose and to allow some things to die with that person. And sometimes it's their insecurities or prejudices or judgments, even of you. And a death of a loved one is also an opportunity to recognize that now it's your turn to stand up and not necessarily take the place that this other person held in your life, but perhaps step up to take a similar role in another's life. When I had many family members die, like one a year for about an 8-year stretch, I started calling it the changing of the guards. that now my elders, for the most part, were moving on. And so I had to recognize that it was my turn to step up, to own the wisdom that I do have, to own the wisdom that I learned from them, and to stand in the role of being an elder. And I don't mean old, but I mean someone who has something to share, someone who may be able to guide others because of experiences that I've been through. And it's unfortunate when we never take on that role, that we stay in the role of child because of a certain dynamic in a relationship with a parent, with a relative, with a sibling. When we don't allow ourselves to mature out of our child selves, we're living a stunted version of ourselves. So when a parent, caregiver, older brother, sister leave our lives through death or otherwise, sometimes I feel that on one level, it's because we have learned everything we could from that person already. And it's time to integrate all of those lessons, all of that experience, all of the wisdom, all of the essence of who they were to us into our own selves and put that into action in the world. So to feel like ourselves again, it may take time before we can identify ourselves outside of this river of emotion that we may be experiencing. And it can be a long journey. But during that process of being unmoored, untethered, out of predictable touch with who we were, we need to be gentle with ourselves, very gentle with ourselves, and allow ourselves to make mistakes, allow ourselves to be unpredictable, allow ourselves to not keep promises or not even make them. It's the best case scenario. Because when we are becoming someone new, we don't know what we're capable of. And we certainly don't know how to be this new person. And we will mess up and we will disappoint people because many people do not understand what you're going through when you're grieving. And so, therefore, you have to be the one that understands for yourself. Understands, gives you permission, gives you great leeway to just get through the day. And getting through the day may mean you have some coping mechanisms set up in advance to make sure that you get your daily sustenance. to make sure that you have your needs met. And I don't mean wants here, I mean needs. So make it easy for yourself. If evenings are hard, then do some preparations to make the evenings easier. When my mother had passed away, I knew evenings were hard, and I knew I wasn't going to eat if I had to cook. So I bought a whole bunch of frozen dinners, Indian food, and put them in the freezer because I knew that was going to get me through. It was going to be easier just to heat something up than it was just to cook. There are certain things that I allowed myself to do, like travel, to put more experiences in my life between the time of loss and where I was going. So the more experiences out in the real world that I felt I had, the broader my perspective was on life and on my situation of the losses that I had endured. Anyway, today is September 16th, and this is Monday Church with Reverend Montclair. And if you find yourself grieving, I hope you find a comfortable, cozy place to be. And I hope you allow yourself certain luxuries to help ease whatever pain and grief you're going through. And symbolically celebrate something about the relationship that you are grieving. And it's not only the relationship with the other, but the relationship with yourself, of who you are becoming and what aspect of you that that person held in them. What did they reflect back to you? And it's worth seeking that out if you don't already have the words for it, and writing it down, and write it down with gratitude. Say, thank you for believing in me. Thank you for reflecting back to me of my abilities, or thank you for showing me a way to be. And again, if you're grieving something you actually never got to have with the person you wanted to have it with, thank them for showing you what it is you really wanted. And make sure you know what that is. So when you go out into the world as a more healed version of yourself, you'll know what you're looking for. And you'll know more of who you are when you stop denying what your true emotions and experiences are. So that's it on grief today. Be kind to yourself. Be very, very kind to yourself. That means in action, in thought, in the memories you choose to reflect on. Be very kind to yourself. I am Reverend Montclair, and this is Monday Church with Reverend Montclair. See you next time. Thanks for tuning in.